And I've auditioned for a lot and haven't got a lot.
Have you ever wondered what it's really like to live in the shadow of one of Hollywood's most legendary icons? Or how it feels when your career constantly gets compared to a father whose name alone changed the history of cinema? Today, we'll be diving deep into the life of Scott Eastwood, the son of Clint Eastwood, and exposing the struggles, controversies, and surprising truths about him that most people never hear about.
I just wanted to mention it's gotta be strange because I would think, okay, this is your dad.
Who again?
Clint. His name's Clint Eastwood.
Oh, yeah.
Scott Eastwood's story isn't the fairy tale Hollywood tale many assume it to be. Despite his good looks, famous last name, and opportunities that seem limitless on the surface, Scott's journey has been riddled with rejection, tragedy, and the constant weight of expectation. But behind all that pressure lies a man who has always been determined to carve his own path.
Thank you for calling Vantage Light Bulb. How may I brighten up your day?
You can start by telling me why I've got an entire Christmas tree that won't light up.
Even when the world won't stop reminding him of who his father is. The burden of a name. While being born into fame might sound like the ultimate shortcut to success for some, that wasn't the case for Scott Eastwood. That same fame became a double-edged sword for him. On one hand, Clint Eastwood is one of the most recognizable figures in film history, a director, actor, and cultural icon. But for Scott, that last name was both a blessing and a curse. From the very start, casting directors and critics weren't willing to see Scott for who he was. Instead, they measured him against his father's impossible legacy. He had to walk into every audition knowing that people were already comparing his voice, his looks, and even his mannerisms to one of the greatest actors of all time. That was his harsh reality. In fact, early in his career, Scott auditioned under the name Scott Reeves, choosing to hide his father's identity to see if he could make it on his own merit. It was his way of proving that he wasn't simply coasting off nepotism. And while some might say having Clint Eastwood as a father automatically opens doors, Scott wanted to make sure nobody could say that he didn't earn his place. Early struggles in Hollywood. But hiding his famous name didn't shield him from Hollywood's cold rejection. Scott often talked about how he faced constant dismissals, failing auditions, and struggling to book major roles. He wasn't taken seriously at first, seen by many as just the good-looking son of Clint Eastwood. His early roles were small, scattered across films that didn't make much of a dent. But Scott refused to give up. He hustled, worked odd jobs, and kept pushing until he finally started landing roles that showcased more than just his resemblance to his father. But even when opportunities came his way, the whispers followed him. Was he really talented, or was he simply riding Clint's coattails? This was the constant battle that defined his early career. Finding his own voice, Scott eventually landed roles in films like The Longest Ride, Fury, and Suicide Squad. These projects gave him bigger exposure, but they also placed him directly under the microscope. Audiences and critics debated whether Scott was the next big star or simply another Hollywood offspring trying and failing to live up to the family name. One of the most fascinating things about Scott was how self-aware he is of this perception. In interviews, he's openly admitted that his father's shadow is impossible to escape. Yet, instead of running from it, he's embraced it. He's acknowledged that while his father's name helped him, it also forced him to work twice as hard to prove that he belongs. And through that honesty, Scott has slowly gained respect, not just as Clint's son, but as a man who is willing to confront the reality of his situation head-on. Personal tragedy. Behind the charm and Hollywood spotlight, however, Scott has endured heartbreaking tragedy. In 2014, he lost his girlfriend in a horrific car accident. The grief was devastating, and Scott has spoken about how it changed him forever. That loss shaped the way he views life, relationships, and even his career. It was a reminder that fame and fortune don't shield anyone from pain. For Scott, it was a turning point in his life. He became more grounded, more focused, and more aware of the fleeting nature of everything, fame included. This deeply personal experience is rarely discussed in the tabloids, but it reveals a side of Scott that most fans never see. A man who's faced real heartbreak, not just Hollywood's struggles. Living in Clint's shadow. One of the recurring themes in Scott's journey is the constant reminder of who his father is. Every role, every interview, every photo spread inevitably circles back to the question, is he like Clint? Will he ever measure up? And truthfully, that comparison is both unfair and unavoidable. Clint Eastwood built a career spanning decades, defined by iconic roles and groundbreaking directing. For Scott, trying to reach that same legendary status is like running a race with no finish line. But here's where Scott stands out. He doesn't shy away from acknowledging his father's influence. He often calls Clint his hero, his inspiration, and someone he continues to learn from. Rather than resenting the comparisons, Scott has leaned into them while still trying to carve out his individuality in a cutthroat industry. The masculine image. Another layer to Scott's Hollywood persona is his image as the rugged, masculine type. Much like his father, Scott embodies that traditional tough guy archetype, handsome, athletic, and confident. He's often cast in roles that highlight this, whether it's as a soldier, cowboy, or action-driven character. But in today's Hollywood, where conversations about masculinity, vulnerability, and identity are shifting, Scott sometimes feels like a throwback to a different era. This has made some critics skeptical about his range as an actor. Can he play more than just the charming tough guy? Scott, however, embraces this image. He lives an adventurous life outside of Hollywood, surfing, riding horses, fishing, and taking risks. His social media showcases a man who doesn't just play rugged characters on screen, but genuinely embodies that lifestyle. In a way, this authenticity makes him stand out even more, especially in an industry where image is everything. Building his career beyond acting. Scott isn't just relying on acting to define him. Like his father, he's also expressed interest in directing and producing. He's openly said that he admires Clint's ability to control a story from behind the camera. And while he hasn't yet reached those same heights, his determination to explore multiple avenues in entertainment shows that he's thinking long-term. He's also involved in business ventures, proving that he's not content with being a one-dimensional Hollywood star. Scott seems to understand that in today's world, success means diversifying, and he's been laying down that foundation. A life outside Hollywood. Despite being part of the celebrity world, Scott Eastwood doesn't come across as the typical Hollywood star. He's not often seen partying or chasing tabloid headlines. Instead, he leads a life that's adventurous but grounded. Whether it's traveling, outdoor sports, or spending time with family, Scott prefers substance over flash. This is another area where he differs from many of his peers. While other stars thrive on constant publicity, Scott seems content flying a little under the radar. It's his way of keeping a balance, embracing fame when necessary, but not letting it consume him. The unanswered question. So where does Scott Eastwood go from here? Will he ever escape his father's shadow? Or will he always be defined by the Eastwood name? That's the big question that lingers over his career to this day. Despite everything, what's certain is the fact that Scott has faced more hurdles than people realize. He's endured rejection, heartbreak, and the heavy weight of expectations. Yet he's still standing, still working, and still chasing the dream. That persistence alone deserves recognition. Scott may never be Clint Eastwood, and maybe he doesn't want to be. Maybe his real success lies not in matching his father's legendary career, but in writing his own story on his own terms. So what do you think? Will Scott Eastwood ever step out of Clint's shadow and be recognized purely for his own talent? Or will the Eastwood name always define him, no matter what he achieves? Let us know your thoughts in the comments down below. And if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe for more such content.